In a time long past, two kingdoms stood on the brink of war. One was vast and mighty, its banners fluttering with the confidence of countless victories, its armies a tide of steel and strength. The other was small, its resources meager, its soldiers weary from the mere thought of the looming conflict. The smaller kingdom's troops, outnumbered and outmatched, whispered among themselves of inevitable defeat. Their generals, seasoned yet disheartened, saw no path to victory and urged surrender to spare lives. Despair hung heavy, like a fog that refused to lift. The king of the smaller kingdom, however, carried a spark of defiance in his heart. Though his advisors pressed for submission, he could not accept defeat without a fight. His resolve led him to seek counsel from a sage renowned across the land for wisdom that transcended the ordinary. The sage lived in solitude, in a humble dwelling surrounded by ancient trees, where the wind seemed to carry whispers of forgotten truths. The king, cloaked in simple garb to avoid attention, approached the sage with a plea for guidance. He spoke of his kingdom's plight, of the overwhelming enemy, and of the fear that gripped his people. To the king's astonishment, the sage did not offer words of strategy or predictions of doom. Instead, he proposed something unthinkable. He would lead the army himself. The king hesitated. The sage was no warrior. His hands were unscarred by battle, his frame untested by the weight of armor. Yet there was a quiet certainty in the sage's eyes, a depth that suggested knowledge beyond the battlefield. Trusting in this, the king granted the sage command, though doubt gnawed at his mind. The army assembled, a ragtag force of soldiers whose courage had been eroded by the shadow of their adversary. The sage, now their general, stood before them, his presence calm yet commanding. He spoke no grand speeches, offered no promises of glory. Instead, he led them on a march toward the battlefield, their steps heavy with uncertainty. Along the way, the army paused at a small weathered temple, its stones worn smooth by time and reverence. The sage entered alone, emerging with a single coin held aloft. He declared that he would consult the heavens for a sign. If the coin landed face up, it would be a divine promise of victory, and they would march to fight. If it landed face down, they would retreat, sparing themselves certain defeat. The soldiers gathered close, their eyes fixed on the coin as it gleamed in the sage's hand. He tossed it into the air and it spun, catching the light before landing on the earth. Face up. A cheer erupted from the ranks, raw and unbridled. The soldiers, once slumped with dread, stood taller, their faces lit with newfound fire, as if the heavens themselves had blessed their cause. The sage said nothing more, only motioned for the march to continue. The army moved forward, their steps no longer heavy but purposeful, their hearts alight with belief. The battle that followed was fierce. The larger kingdom's forces descended like a storm, their numbers overwhelming, their weapons gleaming with menace. Yet the smaller army fought with a ferocity that belied their size. They moved as one, their movements synchronized not by flawless training, but by an unshakable conviction. Where fear had once weakened their resolve, now burned a certainty that victory was theirs to claim. The clash of steel rang out, and though the odds seemed insurmountable, the smaller army pressed on, undaunted. When the dust settled, the impossible had happened. The smaller kingdom stood victorious, its banners raised high, its enemy retreating in disarray. The soldiers, battered but triumphant, began their journey home. Their spirits soared, their voices raised in songs of victory. The sage, still their general, walked among them, his expression unchanged, serene as ever. As they rested one evening by a quiet river, the sage gathered the soldiers and the king. He reached into his robe and produced the coin that had sparked their courage. Holding it up, he turned it slowly, revealing a truth that silenced the camp. Both sides of the coin were identical. It could only ever land face up. A murmur rippled through the ranks, not of anger but of awe. The sage explained, his voice steady, that the coin was merely a tool, a spark to ignite what already lay within them. The heavens had not decreed their victory, their belief had. The soldiers had fought not because of divine will, but because they had chosen to trust in their own strength. The king, watching his people absorb this revelation, felt a weight lift from his heart. He understood now that the sage's wisdom lay not in tactics or prophecy, but in awakening the power of conviction. The kingdom, though small, grew stronger in the years that followed. Its people carried the memory of that day, not as a tale of a miraculous coin, but as a lesson etched into their souls. They learned that belief could move mountains, that a heart resolute in its purpose could overcome even the greatest odds. The victory was not just over an enemy, but over the doubt that had once threatened to consume them. The sage returned to his quiet life, his name fading into the whispers of the wind. Yet his lesson endured, passed down through generations. It was a simple truth, yet profound. Success is not solely born of skill or strength, but of the mindset one carries into the fray. A mind anchored in doubt will falter, but one buoyed by faith in itself can achieve the extraordinary. The smallest spark of belief, kindled at the right moment, can set ablaze a fire capable of reshaping destiny. The kingdom's triumph became a beacon, a reminder to all who heard the tale that the power to overcome lies within. No matter how daunting the challenge, no matter how vast the opposition, the choice to believe in one's own potential can turn the tide. The coin, though a ruse, had revealed a truth far greater than any battlefield victory, that the greatest battles are won not with swords, but with the courage to trust in what is possible.